Shapes and Sounds acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we're recording and connecting with you from, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past and present.
Hi, Marcus. Hi, Yo.
Hello.
Hello. For those who don't know, we have the MVP in the building today, our technical producer, a creative, and a musician, Yo. Hello.
Woo!
Hello. He's usually
Stop it.
Yo's usually sitting in the corner while we're in the studio, so it's weird to have you in front of me now. We always have like that nod of assurance from Yo so that we know, we're on the right track. So it's going to be interesting now that we're interviewing you. Mm-hmm. We're putting you in the hot seat today. Last season, first episode, I want to set the scene. I've got a little bit of a story about one of the first times I really interacted with Yo. We were all in the car on the way to episode 1 of season 1. So the very first episode, we're all a bag of nerves. We're in the car, and Yo just like stops us for a second, and he goes, "Hey everyone, I have a crazy story." Yo, can you lead us into what that crazy story was?
Yeah, sure. As you're saying, like the nerves were high because it was like we had an important job to do, our very first episode of the podcast. But unbeknownst to you all, I was actually carrying quite the mental load that morning because when my alarm went off, I woke up and I had all these notifications and DMs and extra follows on like my social media apps. And the DMs were saying things like, "Bro, you've been sampled. You've made it. You're on Cardi's track." And first of all, for those who don't know, like Cardi is short for a very prominent rapper called Playboi Carti. That is by itself is wild.
As soon as you like name dropped Cardi, I was already like, that's wild, because I know that everyone that I know knows that name. Like that's wild.
Totally. Yeah. and then sampling, if you don't know what sampling is, it's basically when there's a song that already exists by someone and then a music producer takes that song, chops up a part of it, and like manipulates it and turns it into a new song, or uses it as an instrumental bed or like a music bed for a new song. So a rapper could rap over it or a singer could sing over it. And so that's what my DMs were full of, messages telling me that one of my tracks had been sampled. And I thought it was a scam because people were also sending me links to a particular video on Reddit. Eventually I kind of checked it out. I double checked the URL to make sure like it wasn't like a phishing link or anything. Yeah. And I watched this video and it's literally this mumble rap song that has used my voice and a track of mine from 12 years ago called Jacob's Ladder. So in 2013, I wrote this song called Jacob's Ladder and I put it on SoundCloud because it was really hard to get anything on Spotify. I didn't even know what Spotify was back then. So, I was DIY, completely independent. I made this track in my bedroom. I mixed it and I mastered it myself, like super indie, and then put it on SoundCloud. That's what you did back then. Mm-hmm. I think you still do that today if you're in the business, and you're just getting started or whatever. But anyway, that's what I did, and somehow Playboi Carti got a hold of it and sampled it and used it in a track. Now the song that Playboi Carti put it on is called 2024, and you can listen to it and watch the music video on YouTube. And it's racked up over 50 million plays. And it also credits some producers that he worked with on the track. And one of the producers' names was someone that you might recognize. It was Kanye West.
Welcome to the Asian Mental Health Podcast, brought to you by Shapes and Sounds.
That was so crazy. When you said that, my mind was just blown. That was amazing.
Wild, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. And actually there's this, after absorbing it all, I still didn't believe it. But while I was like kind of scrolling through the comments, I found this really interesting street theory that the reason that Kanye found me and sampled me was because he was Googling himself, because his nickname is Ye.
Yeah.
YE, and then his like fat fingers accidentally pushed O and then typed in yo, and then he found me.
Yeah. Honestly, I believe that.
Yeah, I believe it too.
I don't reckon he even knows my name or anything. I reckon one of his people found. Anyway, whatever. The music industry runs deep.
But yeah, what happened next? What happened after that whole ordeal?
Well, I mean, I came and recorded episode 1 with you. Like,
Well, yes.
Yeah, I didn't really have time to think about it. But it was kind of like stressful because, you know, I had 2 things going on in my mind. The first one was that I respect sampling culture. I know that a lot of my favorite R&B and hip hop records wouldn't exist without that shoot first, ask questions later attitude that is pretty natural amongst sampling communities and music producers. But on the second, secondly though, I also was like, you stole my music. You know, that's my intellectual property. That song is that song because of my vocal sample that's been chopped up and put in there. So, yeah, there was a lot going on, like, you know, like work and then all these kind of philosophical things in my brain. And yeah, there was a lot going on.
Yeah, that sounds like a really heavy time. Like I'm just imagining, like we were all kind of like after that moment, we were all in the studio and like we were all kind of processing it with you for a second. I was so out of it for a bit because I was like, man, like that's just so out of this world.
Out
like,
of all people.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And it's such a large scale, like unbelievable kind of thing to happen that it's like, it really is hard to process.
I guess you didn't really know me that well at that point either.
Yeah. That was just like another layer to it. Yeah. But yeah, do you think from that experience, there must have been like a lot to think about, a lot of like, I don't know, it would have just been very overwhelming, I can imagine. Did you learn anything from that experience which changed your approach to mental health, or maybe like how your past experience shaped your approach to the situation even?
Yes, I did learn some things. In terms of my past experience, I was really grateful that I wasn't a complete newcomer to the music industry and that I understood sampling law. Like, so I know that you can't just take someone else's stuff without permission.
Yeah, like the legality of it.
Yeah. Like I'm not just like some dumb obscure artist who doesn't practice music anymore. It's like I'm still an active artist. I'm still releasing, and I'm very savvy in terms of like what you can and can't do, because I'm so like I want to give people their dues as well. So if I was to ever work with someone, I want them to be credited, right? But the other thing that I learned was, I guess I was reminded of, was that I have a community around me and they support me, like when things are tough, and I just need to let them know, I think. And so sometimes events get to the point where, like, for example, you, Marcus, Asami, in the car, you were my community at that point in time. And I just had something, I was like full to the brim with this news and I had to share it with someone.
Yeah.
And I hadn't spoken about it with anyone. So I couldn't,
really, from that point,
not really, apart from my managers.
Yeah.
I couldn't really, I hadn't had the chance because I've just been working. So I had to tell someone.
Yeah, definitely.
It was you. So yeah. But then, okay. So from a work point of view, I mentioned my managers just then. My manager, her name is Small Fry, and she was basically like, this is just like any other like business arrangement that we have. You and we also had my PR manager, Giselle, in on the conversation. And so both of them together were like, yeah, we'll take care of this. Like, we just need to do some maths and then send the right emails, engage your lawyer, the one that you've always had. And then, I think eventually also I spoke to a bunch of friends and they were like, you've already done the work. Like, you wrote that song 12 years ago. That is the work done. Now your team will kick in and do their work to make sure that you get what is owed to you. So try not to stress about it. Like, just know that you haven't done anything wrong. So there's nothing to stress about. You just like tell your team what the goal is, and then they go and try and achieve it with you. That put me a lot more at ease. And it reminded me, I think, that my mental health, it's not something that I can always just like fix or heal by myself. Sometimes I do need to lean outside of my own brain.
That is so nice to hear. So I guess Kanye's story aside, why we're really putting you in the hot seat today is we really want to hear from you, like how you take care of your mental health. And I know like you kind of alluded to that already throughout that Kanye story. But yeah, perhaps for the listeners, this might be a way to sort of spark some ideas or motivate you to like just like give some new strategies a go, or like maybe you might think of something differently after listening to this episode. And we just think, as usual, like this is a really good way to sort of destigmatize mental health within Asian communities just by like having a chat on public forums like this. So as usual, just before we dive in, it's important to sort of locate where Yo is sitting on the spectrum for mental health. So how would you rate your current state of mental health on a scale of 1 being horrible, 10 being excellent?
I have grown to love this question after hearing it in all the previous episodes that I will be producing. I think I am a solid 7. And
that's very solid.
Yeah, that's like a positive thing. And the reason I think of that is because I have had a little bit more time to take care of myself recently. And I'm, fresh off a very small but effective break that I took before coming into this, recording period of this podcast.
That's really good. And to further contextualize for the audience, whether they can also relate with your story today, could you just give us like, I don't know, who might be listening that could share some similarities with your strategies, I guess?
I reckon my perspective is going to resonate with creative people, especially people who've chosen a creative career. So musicians definitely, because that's what I consider myself as first and foremost, a musician. But like any designers, artists, visual artists, multidisciplinary artists, people who are in the gig economy, so they're freelancing. People who are also feeling a little bit insecure about where they are in life as they approach particular age milestones. Like I'm heading towards 40, which is, and I'm still renting, and it's like there's a lot in terms of like what's ahead of me. We're also in the cost of living crisis, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of these things are things that impact me, and that's probably the context that I will be like coming. I'll be coming from that as my background in terms of like how I'm talking about my mental health.
Could you speak about that sort of pathway, or like your career in music a little bit, or like just generally like the creative pathway?
Yeah, sure. When I was in high school, I chose a bunch of subjects for year 11 and 12, and I pretty much sucked at all of them except for music. And music was really easy. And I couldn't really see it in any other way, as in like, that's what I'm good at. I guess that's a pretty clear indication, and it felt easy to me. That's discounting the tuition that my mother put me through. I'm always grateful for that. Like sometimes she was pretty hard on me and I hated it. But like I do remember there was a point when in between high school and uni where I was like, wow, music theory is really easy to me because I've already done years of it. Oh, wow. Like music it makes sense to me. Now, I wasn't like a very skilled pianist or, a profound child genius composer or anything, but I just really enjoyed technology as well and listening to music, like just listening to the radio. And so technology, music, I went to uni to do music technology, learned how to produce, learned how to manipulate audio, learned how audio behaves. And then, yeah, like in terms of that, I tried for 6 years to get a solid job in music or in audio. And the whole time I worked retail. And then I eventually landed a gig as a radio marketing audio producer at SBS. And that started my like kind of media career, I guess. And but at that point, like I'd already released a record independently, right, as a songwriter. And so that was also a point where my career split into two. And then all of a sudden I've got two practices. I've got like my professional audio and then my professional music career, and they're just running in parallel.
Right.
And I bounce between the two to like make money and live, etc.
Music as a therapeutic force. I think we've touched on it previously before. I think in my life, music's very important. Did you find, was part of the reason that you were drawn to music sort of a therapeutic force, or was it purely like an intellectual or just like a like thing? Like, was it not that deep, or was there something there?
I think it definitely therapeutic. I may not have known it when I was younger, but I'm an only child. Say what you might want to say about that or your thoughts on that, but I think it's all bullshit. Like, no one ever knows I'm an only child until I say it. So that stereotype is tired. But I think that I spent so much time alone that I didn't really have anyone to communicate my feelings to. I didn't really get along with that many people in school. And back then, like, especially boys, we didn't talk about our feelings. It just came out in other ways. So music was one of the ways that my emotions came out.
Yeah.
And both listening to it. And then when I finally got my own personal computer, I got to like make stuff and toy around with music software and express myself that way.
So has your approach to your music or your relationship with music in general changed over time?
Yeah, definitely. I used to be so ride or die with music, where I was like in my 20s and I just thought all independent artists could make it if they just worked hard enough. Just like believe in the dream blindly. Like it was a little bit kind of arrogant, I think. It was just like, yeah, I know what's best about music. Like this is my vision, and like once it's out in the world, eventually someone's going to catch on and then like explode it. Like it's going to be a moment. Fast forward right to today, like from those idealist thoughts about what a music career would be. I knew it would be hard. Everyone warned me that music was going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I ignored all of that. Like my mum initially didn't want me to do this. She's like, get a backup career, blah, 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 blah. And I respect that. I know where she's coming. I totally know where she's coming from, because she worked so hard to get here to allow me to choose music. Totally acknowledge that. Anyhow, so even if you fast forward to 2024, we are in this tough like economy where everything is really inflated in terms of prices. The music industry is visibly struggling. Like in terms of revenue, artists make absolutely fuck all compared to other people in other industries. And there's no regulation, there's no union, there's no organizational body. The government doesn't yet value the arts as highly as it should. This is just my opinion. And I feel like that reflects on the rest of society as well. It's like music is just a thing that is free because of streaming or whatever. I hate that, but that's where we're at. That's the reality of it. So to cope, I kind of just have to work. I lean on that alternate career path that I told you about in the first, like earlier in this podcast, where in this episode, where I was like, that's where my career split into two. I'm now in media, but I'm also in music. And so it's been a very solid time in the media stream where I've just been producing things like this podcast or working at SBS or working at the 7 a.m. podcast on news. And I mean, all of that is new for me too, like podcasting in the world. And for me, I'm getting in touch still, I guess, with the storytelling part of it and learning about that. And that's exciting, but it's not music. Roundabout way though, like that's how things have changed. Like I have to now worry a lot more about rent because I'm also a lot more particular about like where I want to live. And I don't want to like, you know, live in a crummy house with black mold everywhere anymore. So I will pay a little bit more for rent.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess going a bit broader now, I mean, from what it sounds like it's been a very sort of emotional journey as well. Would you say sort of that music career or like your media career, does that sort of feed into how you approach your mental health, like your overarching sort of philosophy to thinking about that?
It does feed into it. I know that music is, like I said before, it's an emotional release for me. And then so like the more I'm focusing on non-musical work, the less kind of time I can spend examining my emotions and like dealing with them, I guess, and processing them, because that's what I do with music. There are other things that I use as almost stand-ins, not quite stand-ins, but things that help. And so like things like hobbies, like physical activity and cooking and stuff. It's like those all reward my brain with I don't know what, dopamine. So I feel better about life, right? Even if I can't make music, I can do all this other stuff. And I don't really get it, but I can't just be like, okay, give up sport and give up cooking and just focus on music. It just doesn't work that way because I love those things as well. You know, like
so you need like all the different.
I need all of it.
Yep.
Yeah. To feel complete as like a human being.
Yeah.
So you've touched on the links between like community, sport, and food, and how that helps you to support your mental health. But what does that look like on sort of like a daily level for you? And what sort of things do you like to make, for example, when it comes to food? Or
Yeah.
I know you love your food.
People know me for my love of food, and like lately I've been making this pork and cabbage soup, which is like really easy. It's just like you basically slice a pork belly up really thinly, and then you break apart a wombok, and then you layer the pork and the wombok. And then you cut
it.
Yeah, you make a massive stack.
Yep.
You cut the stack into 3, and then you shove it all in a pot.
Yeah.
And then you basically dump in a cup of rice wine, salt, pepper, whatever else. Like you want to put garlic in there. Definitely put some ginger in there because that takes out the porky smell. But then you just pop that on the burner or in the oven for like an hour and a half, and it comes out so lovely to just have with rice or even by itself. But like cooking is a big one because the rewards are so tangible, and also like therapeutically, it feels therapeutic because you're doing things step by step. You're breaking down a larger task into small steps, and you're completing each one for a lovely end result. Like, and the sum is greater than the parts.
Does that sort of like feed into like the idea of community you touched on as well? Like, do you cook with friends, like have dinner parties? Yeah,
absolutely. I think COVID has really broken down the frequency of which I've had people over and cooked for them, but it's still super satisfying. Like I'll have little groups of like 2 or 3 people over and I'll cook for them. And isn't that, I think that is such a great thing that brings people together. Like food always brings people together. And for me, I guess that leads on to another really good point, is like sometimes I think that I'm doing so well by myself, and it doesn't dawn on me for a little while that I actually need social interaction with my friends and people that I love. And when that hits, my strategy is straight away to make plans. And yeah, if I had no community, I'd have no one to make plans with, right?
Yeah.
So they're so important. It's so important.
This kind of links in with sort of the idea of like limits. Like what indicates to you that it is time to go and see your friends? It is time to go and, connect with people that are in your community.
I think when I reach my like limit, so to speak, and I guess I define it's a very cloudy term, but it's like, oh, I just can't live like this anymore or whatever, like I just feel like I'm going to burst or something. It's a very physical feeling. But it also manifests itself in other ways. Like say I'm stressed or something, I'll wake up in the middle of the night for no reason and then I can't get back to sleep. And then my next day is totally messed up because of that. I'll also have, or I'll wake up, even if I have a good sleep and then I wake up and I just don't want to get out of bed. Like, yeah. And I mean, I've had depression before. That happened a lot when I was like depressed. Things like losing focus really easily, having a lot of decision paralysis where I just cannot decide like what I want to do. I think maybe Marcus, your episode when you're talking about like looking at all the things and just not doing anything and stressing about all the things, like in terms of like your task list or something like that. I also can relate to that. And I think like another really clear indicator is when everything everyone says to me feels like a personal attack. I don't know if any of you ever feel like it's super irrational. Like I feel like I'm just being in an emotional basket case. And it's like, why does everyone always have a problem with me? When I get to that point and I ask that question, I know I need some friendship time. Like,
You don't have to touch on this if you don't want, but like sort of navigating that period of like you say you had like experience with depression and stuff. Like what was that like navigating that? Like any specific stuff you did, or like how did you kind of come up out of that dip, if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, I should have said this before. We're talking about like an overarching philosophy. I think life is so complicated. I have to make mental health as simple as possible, like mental health care as simple as possible for myself. So there's one thing that my first therapist said to me, and he was like, usually if you're not feeling good, you're missing one of three things, and that's sleep, like you're not eating enough or you're not exercising enough. And so those are the three things that I really cling to when I'm feeling terrible. And if they don't work, then I just have to write things down and get them out of my head and make plans, get my calendar out and just be like, okay, this is the day you're trying to get through that pile of stuff that is weighing you down. You know? And then so like, I remember I was feeling really burnt out and absolutely hating music, with this one point in my life. And I went to the Shapes and Sounds directory and I found a therapist called Jeffrey Hon, I think his name was. And he was really great. Yeah. And, I couldn't get an appointment straight away, which is whole nother conversation. It's like, our whole system is sagging under the weight of our troubles. But eventually I got to see him. And over 6 months, we worked through a very systematic plan. And I learned a whole bunch of techniques, and that really helped. So I'm one of those examples of where therapy really worked for me, and culturally responsive therapy also really worked for me because I saved so much time with Jeffrey. He's Chinese. So.
Yeah.
So you said that he taught you some strategies. What did those look like? What are the things that you then implemented into your life that might be sticking around today?
The one that that always comes to my mind, it's a part of being kind to yourself. It's kind of falls under that umbrella. But he taught it to me as leaves on a stream, which is imagine that each of your emotions is a leaf and then it falls into a stream of water. And the stream might kind of eddy and flow and swirl around in an area for a little while, but eventually it's going to wash that leaf like all the way out. So just know that it's okay for these emotions to be crap and to hang around for a little while, but they will leave. And like, if you can visualize it, it's like more likely that it'll actually happen too. So that, I guess in some way, that's like framing how to like sit with your emotion and then let it move on, you know, and that it's basically okay. So that's one thing. And I mean, when he was talking about burnout, well, I spoke to him about burnout and lack of motivation and stuff, and he suggested the Pomodoro method
Oh, yeah.
of setting a timer. And I don't do that now, but what I do is I like put like I don't set a timer. I just look at the time and I go, okay, for the next half an hour, I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to do anything other than the task that's in front of me. Yeah. And also multitasking is a myth. We should actually just close all our tabs and like look at the one thing in front of us. Yeah. But anyway, that's what he didn't say that. That comes from other things. But the method of setting a limit of time and then just trying to focus for that amount and then deciding if you want to go again, if you feel terrible or not, like that really helped me like get work done and pull my head out of the burnout that I was in. Yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful mindset to have when you're approaching all of that stuff that's happening in your life.
Yeah.
What about like sort of like tangible things like routines
Sure.
that you do at like maybe like monthly or yearly level?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you did Ask Daily before.
Yeah.
And there's stuff like I always make my bed. Like I have to make my bed.
Yep.
It's a thing. It's like sometimes it's not the best job of making my bed.
Yep.
It's just like shaking out the doona or whatever. But like at least I know that I got that done.
Yeah, it's like a little achievement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, I take care of myself. Like I brush my teeth. I shower before bed. I look at what's on for the next day. I basically like try to take care of my future self as much as possible in the moment. But in terms of like weekly and monthly, I like to clean a lot. I don't like the process. I hate cleaning, but I like having a clean space because for me, a clean space is like, it declutters my mind as well. You know, I can kind of like think clearly if everything's nice.
I'm a stickler for that as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right. Yeah. I do make sure, it sounds a little bit cold and robotic, but I do make sure that I make time to see people in a social way. I make time to see my friends. It can be really hard because I have a few friends, so it's like sometimes I don't see them any more than once a month or something. But like when I'm there, phone away, and I'm like 100% present. Yeah, and yeah, I think monthly I try to do a very zoomed out check of my workload and make sure I haven't said yes to too many things. Yeah. And look, sometimes all this stuff I don't do well at all and I still fall off the horse and I struggle. So, you know, being real there. It's like all these things, they don't always work for me either.
To bring it back to, I guess, where we really started this conversation, we talked about the Kanye story. We touched on how stressful that situation was, right? Did you change up any part of this routine, or did you do something special in this point in time that then helped you process this, or did you have some sort of approach that was different, or I guess just unique from your day-to-day life?
Yeah, or just like when you're in extremely stressful situations, do you do anything more? Like, do you just cling onto the routine more?
I'm so used to doing everything myself, right? I'm so used to like handling every facet of my, say, music career, like by myself. And maybe because in the past I've been let down or whatever, or like I've been mistreated, or, you know, I'm not saying that I'm perfect myself, but like, you know, just things happen, things fail, and they have a lasting effect sometimes. But what I have learned to realize, and like I said, I get reminded of these things periodically as well, is that like my team have got me. Like I can trust them. I don't have to like lift the world on my shoulders just to survive. And if I think about it objectively, if any one of my friends came to me saying, hey, I need help with something, I would drop everything and help them. And that's kind of like what my friends and my team and my community do for me. So I guess, yeah, doubling down on that whole like, you can't do everything yourself.
Yeah.
You really can't. And especially the way the world is right now, like it's okay if you're not doing great. Like you can tell people, you can trust other people to help you with that.
I do have a question just purely out of my own interest. When you are a musician like yourself or a creative and you're producing something, you're putting it out into the world, you do put yourself in a bit of a vulnerable state, right? People are viewing something that you inherently put so much time into, so much effort into, and they just get to judge it. It's kind of like that weird knowledge of like, someone's looking at this, you know?
Yeah.
How like are you a self-critical person in those times? And how do you, I guess, manage those thoughts? Because I know that like that is like such an anxious process.
Well, that makes me think about I guess like the end of that whole Kanye Playboy Cardi saga. So basically where we're at now with that is that their record label didn't respond to us for like 2 months, and we were like, come on, like we made a very reasonable offer for compensation for this copyright infringement, and they basically just did not get back to us. And our lawyer was like, hey, it's time to try and get their attention. File a copyright claim on YouTube, which is basically when you tell YouTube that someone has ripped you off and is using your like property, your material as their own.
Yeah, without permission.
Yeah. And so we did. We filed a copyright claim, and they pulled Playboy Cardi's video down.
That's wild.
It was just like we caused a blip in the internet. Like, and all of Cardi's fans figured out that it was me, because it was also kind of news at the time that, you know, it was like I was the creator of the original song. So they all his little fans came to my social media accounts and started DMing me and commenting me and abusing me. Saying really, really awful things, like, you know, well, I won't say them on the pod, but they're really nasty. They're like high school bullying vibes.
Right.
But that for me, because I'd already been through this whole journey of like stress and whatnot, and then also my team totally backing me up on it, I was like, let them say whatever they want. Like, let them. They're all just like little faceless kids or whatever. I don't know who his fan base are, but they're awful. And because they're awful, I don't have to pay any attention to them. And none of their words really hold any weight, because I don't know. I think you and I were talking about this. I asked you the question, why are people so horrible? Like where did they get the audacity to be so horrible? And then you came up, what was your answer? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that sort of part of the social media. You get to be like this nameless soldier, I guess, and to be, I guess, considered legitimate fan or something like that. People do like to say horrible things, and you know, you do really get to hide behind the anonymity of Instagram and whatnot. I think it's a lot easier to say.
But you said that it was because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you saying something about like they're actually really unsure about their own identity.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit like a pathologizing kind of point of view, but I think that a lot of that is stemming from sort of an insecurity of like,
right,
you know,
right.
Am I, you know, enough of this much part of the culture, or how do I make myself authentic? I think that that's definitely part of a lot of what I suspect might be going on there.
Well, speaking about authenticity, it's like, I know what my team's doing. I know what I'm doing. I'm just claiming what's mine. So all this abuse means nothing. And then at that point, I kind of was like, oh, wow, I feel really mentally resilient here. That's great. I was really happy with that, because it was like, that changed from all the stress and the anxiety and the like, what is this? Like, someone stole my stuff, all the way to, yeah, they stole my stuff and now I'm going to get compensated for it. And all the like rubbish comments and public reaction, like it's just going to like, it doesn't mean anything to me, because they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything about copyright law. We do. We're savvy. We've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
I guess I found some self-confidence in that.
That is so good, honestly. Like, Sorry, that was
Jeez, are you all right?
sarcastic when it came out of my mouth.
Are you okay? Oh my
God.
Are you good? Something came out just then.
Okay.
I'm keeping that in the edit.
Oh, that did not come out the way I wanted it to come out. So I was like, what the fuck was that?
For those that don't know, Marcus naturally sounds sarcastic
Yep, I have a
sometimes.
sarcasm problem. So, I mean, I'm sure someone's picked it up already. So,
We personally love it.
but yes, what I wanted to say is, I think all of that stuff tied in with this Kanye story really well. Like everything you shared on this episode, like I think you touched on like that sort of having a positive outlook and that mindset, and I think that really showed within that situation with Kanye. And I guess other stuff you talked about throughout the episode was, I guess, just like sleeping, eating well, exercising,
Keeping it simple, yeah.
yeah, seeking out community when you need it, or like seeking out therapy when it's like getting tough. Yeah, but just for the listeners as well, a reminder that what works for you might not work for you. We just wanted to have this episode so that we could offer you some different perspectives or like some things to think about or reflect on. And we do have the Shapes and Sounds Asian Mental Health Practitioner list as well. So you can find that on our website. And we do have the creative arts therapy workshops coming up as well. So if you are like, a bit of a creative, you can come and join us there as well.
Okay, and to round off this episode, we also have a reflective question for you, the listeners. The question is, what's something that's helped you grow your confidence over time? But yeah, please join us in destigmatizing Asian mental health. Find us on Instagram even, at Just Shapes and Sounds. Please let us know your answers to the prompt as well. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Yo.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to go sit back in my producer's chair because Asami needs to chat with you all about how this season went.
Ooh.
All right, everyone. We did it. We made it in one piece to the end of season 2. Well done to us, hey? And I think we can wrap up the season with just a few reflective prompts, as we always do. So many reflective prompts at Shapes and Sounds. But I think it was a big season for us too. So just to help us digest the season as well as all our listeners, like what's something new that you learned through all our recordings? Like, for example, for me, when you were both talking about how when you meet up with your friends socially that you always plan activities, honestly, I was like, wow, really? You don't just like have coffee and eat? So I think that's something that's something new that I learned and something new that I'll try.
I really like the idea you touched on, Oscar, about third spaces or even like third times. Like I'm never going to reflect on that. Like where will my third space be? Like where will I sit and just reflect and do nothing?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have the answer. Maybe we'll find one. Mine, I definitely learnt a lot more about the nuances in South Asian cultures through Jagesh's episode. I think that was really interesting. I just didn't know like really the intricacies of all of that. That was really interesting.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. And my second question is I just want to put this question in because I find it so joyful. Okay. So my question is like, what did you learn about each other? And I'm just going to look at Marcus and I'm going to tell you like, the sarcasm in your voice is like incredible. I don't know how you do it. And this is a skill that I'm going to learn. Like,
I think it's a bad trait, but
it's like powerful. So that's what I learned about you. I was like, oh wow, Marcus's voice is
then you'll never know if you can trust me or not. Well, from you, Oscar, I think I really like the idea you touched on about like sometimes you're creative, sometimes you're not creative, and just like shifting between that mindset, like how you deal with something might be different. So I don't know, I really like that.
Mine, Asami, you talked about a lot about gaman and a lot about putting up with situations and kind of persevering. But I'd never heard of the idiom 3 years on a rock. Honestly, it doesn't even sound like a full sentence, to be honest. And I still don't really quite know what it means. But it does kind of sit with me. I think
Yeah.
I'll remember that.
We had to look it up, right? And it was like the turtle. Was it the turtle sitting on the rock?
Something about if you sit on a rock for 3 years, eventually the rock gets warm. But me personally, I'm good with like a couple hours. That'll be enough for me, but who knows?
Well, remember it, 3 years. 3 years is a long time, right?
Yep.
It's a long time.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you both for all your time and your energy this week. Thank you to everyone listening. And we're at the end of 2024, and essentially we'll be back in 2025 for season 3. So keep an eye out for us there. In the meantime, you can please follow and like and download each of our episodes on your favorite streaming platform. Be sure to share the episodes that you liked with your friends, or let us know which episodes you liked on our Instagram, or we've even got a survey, but you'll find that all linked in our Instagram at Just Shapes and Sounds. So thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. And we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, everyone.
This is a production from Shapes and Sounds. It's hosted by Asami Koike, Marcus Lai, and Oscar Abe, and produced by Yo Chung. We're proudly supported by the Victorian Department of Health's Diverse Communities program. All thoughts and ideas you hear are independently ours and our guests.